I'm Katherine, 68. This morning, I woke up in my husband Henry's arms, in the bedroom that we've made our own, in the house that has truly become a home. Sunlight filters through the windows overlooking the gardens we tend together, and the aroma of the coffee Henry brews every morning fills the air. At 68, I've never been happier. It's not about Henry's wealth, his magnificent house, or his success. It's because he sees me, truly sees me, and loves what he sees. But it wasn't always like this. 8 months ago, my life was turned upside down by a tornado. I remember that fateful Tuesday afternoon like it was yesterday. I was in my kitchen, the same one where I'd raised my son Ethan, making my usual afternoon tea. The weatherman had mentioned possible storms, but in our small town, that was nothing out of the ordinary. We'd weathered many storms over the years. I should have paid more attention. The wind picked up at an alarming rate, and within minutes, the sky turned an ominous green, black. Fear clenched my stomach as I grabbed my emergency radio and heard the words that would shatter my world. A large tornado was on the ground, moving towards our neighborhood. I had maybe 10 minutes to gather what I could. With shaking hands, I stuffed photo albums, important documents, and a few pieces of jewelry into a suitcase. 45 years of memories, and I could only save what fit in one bag. The basement was cold and foreboding that day. I huddled in the corner, clutching my late husband Robert's old sweater, listening to the deafening sound that seemed like a freight train tearing through my life above. Then came the silence, that dreadful silence that meant everything I knew was gone. When I finally climbed the basement steps, my legs could barely support me. Where my living room used to be, there was only sky and debris. The kitchen table where Ethan used to do his homework was embedded in what remained of the garage wall. My rose garden, the one I'd cared for 25 years, was destroyed. I stood there in the ruins of my life, still wearing Robert's sweater, and cried for the first time since his funeral 10 years ago. The neighbors who were lucky enough to still have their homes took me in that first night. Kind Mrs. Thompson from next door insisted I stay with her, but her place was also damaged, and she had her own family to worry about. The Red Cross set up shelters, but the thought of sleeping in a room full of strangers made me feel even more alone. I knew I had to call Ethan. He lived about an hour away in the city, in a nice neighborhood with beautiful houses. He'd moved there 6 years ago when he got promoted to a high-level position at an insurance firm. We weren't as close as a mother and son should be, but he was all the family I had left. Using Mrs. Thompson's phone, my hands trembling, I dialed his number. "Ethan, honey, it's Mom," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "Mom, what's wrong?" "You sound upset," he replied. "The tornado hit the house, sweetheart. It's gone. Everything's gone," I said, my voice breaking. There was a long pause. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No, I'm okay, but I need somewhere to stay while I figure things out." "Just temporarily," I pleaded. Another pause, and then he said, "Of course, Mom. Of course. Come over. We'll figure this out." The next morning, the insurance adjuster, a young man who seemed disinterested, walked through the remains of my home. "Total loss," he said matter-of-factly. When I asked how much I'd get, he said, "You had a $130,000 policy on the structure, but with your deductible and depreciation, maybe $95,000, maybe less. $95,000 to rebuild 45 years of life seemed impossible." Mrs. Thompson helped me pack what little I'd managed to save into her car: 3 garbage bags of clothes that smelled of mud and disaster, 1 suitcase of photographs and documents, and Robert's old toolbox that somehow survived in the garage. That was all I had left of the life I'd built. The drive to Ethan's house felt like a journey to a foreign land. Everything looked different when you had nowhere to go back to. Ethan's neighborhood was untouched by the storm. Perfect lawns, perfect driveways, and perfect lives continued as if nothing had happened. I felt like an intruder, carrying the wreckage of my life into their pristine world. His house was a modern two-story with large windows and a glass door that his girlfriend Lily had picked out. I'd met Lily exactly 4 times in the 3 years they'd been together. She was 30 to his 38, worked at a high-end marketing agency, and had an opinion about everything. I parked Mrs. Thompson's car in their driveway and sat there for a moment, gathering my courage. This was just temporary, I told myself, until the insurance money came through and I could find a small apartment. But as I raised my hand to knock on the door, I felt that familiar, hollow feeling, like the ground was disappearing beneath my feet. Ethan opened the door before I could knock. For a brief moment, seeing his familiar face, Robert's eyes, and my stubborn chin, I thought everything might be okay. But there was something in his voice, a distance or discomfort. Lily appeared behind him almost immediately, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. Her smile never reached her eyes as she said, "Katherine, how awful about your house." But she was looking at my garbage bags, not at me. I set my bags down in their entryway, suddenly aware of how I must look. My clothes still carried the smell of the disaster. "It's just temporary," I said quickly. "Just until I can get back on my feet." Ethan and Lily exchanged a look, that wordless conversation that couples have, shutting me out. "Let's sit down and talk," Ethan said, leading me into their living room. The room was filled with expensive, modern furniture that looked like no one ever used it. I perched on the edge of the sofa, my muddy shoes on their spotless floor. Lily winced slightly. "So, what's the plan?" Ethan asked, sitting across from me, not next to me where he could comfort his grieving mother. I explained that the insurance money would take a few weeks, and I was hoping to stay there until I found a place. The silence that followed was too long. I watched Lily's face change, and she reached over and placed her hand on Ethan's arm possessively. "Mom," Ethan started, and I knew from his tone that my heart was about to break. "Lily and I really value our privacy here. We work long hours, and this is our sanctuary." I was stunned. "I wouldn't be in your way. I'd help with cooking, cleaning. I wouldn't be any trouble," I said. Lily leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "It's not about trouble, Katherine. It's about space. This is our first home together, and we're still finding our rhythm as a couple." I was his mother. "Of course you are," Lily replied smoothly. "And that's why we think you'd be more comfortable somewhere else, where you can have your independence while you rebuild." I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to defend me, to remember all the sacrifices I'd made for him. But he just nodded. "Lily's right, Mom. We think you'd be happier with your own space." The words hit me like a physical blow. Happier? I lost everything yesterday. Everything. "And you think I'd be happier alone in some hotel room than here with my family?" I said, my voice rising. Lily quickly suggested some extended stay places near the mall. "Very clean, very safe, and they have little kitchenettes so you could cook for yourself," she said. I stared at her. "And how exactly am I supposed to pay for this? The insurance money won't come for weeks." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I could help with that. A few hundred to get you started." A few hundred? Like I was a distant relative, not the woman who'd given him life. I reminded him of all the things I'd done for him. Changing his diapers, walking the floor with him when he was sick, teaching him to ride a bike. But he wouldn't meet my eyes, and Lily squeezed his arm tighter. "We just think everyone would be more comfortable with some boundaries," she said. "Now you're kicking me out," I said flatly. "We're not kicking you out," Ethan protested. "We're just saying this arrangement might not work for anyone." I knew whose idea this was. I could see it in the way Lily sat back, satisfied. I stood up slowly, my knees creaking, a painful reminder of my 68 years and my aloneness in the world. "I see," I said. "Mom, don't be like this. We're trying to do what's best for everyone," Ethan said. "What's best for everyone?" I repeated, as if the words were in a foreign language. "What would be best for everyone, Ethan, is if your mother didn't have to sleep in her car tonight." Lily's perfectly made up face arranged itself into an expression of concern. "You don't have to sleep in your car. There are options," she said. I looked around their perfect living room one more time, at the family photos that included Ethan and Lily but none of me, at the expensive furniture that no one really lived on, and at my son, who'd chosen this cold, beautiful woman over his own mother. "You're right. There are always options," I said finally. I picked up my 3 garbage bags and Robert's toolbox, their weight feeling heavier now that I knew I wasn't welcome. Ethan stood up, looking uncomfortable, but not enough to change his mind. "I'll call you in a few days," he said. "Don't bother," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I wouldn't want to intrude on your sanctuary." I walked out of that perfect house and sat in Mrs. Thompson's borrowed car for a long time before I could bring myself to start the engine. Through the front window, I could see Ethan and Lily talking, probably about how difficult I was being. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd always told myself I was strong and independent after Robert's death, but now, when I really needed help, I realized independence was a luxury I couldn't afford. I drove to the Walmart parking lot and sat there as the sun went down, trying to figure out where a 68-year-old woman with $100 in her purse and 3 bags of tornado-damaged belongings was supposed to sleep. The car was getting cold, and I had maybe 2 hours before the security guard would notice me and ask me to move along. That's when I remembered the business card I'd carried in my wallet for almost 50 years. It was yellowed with age and soft from being handled. It was from Henry, my high school love. He was 19 when we dated, and I was 18. He worked at his father's small construction shop after school and dreamed of building something big. We dated for 9 months, and at 18, it felt like forever. He used to take me to the old lake outside town, where we'd sit on the hood of his old truck and talk about our plans. He promised to come back for me before he left for college in another state. But as life went on, his letters became less frequent. When I met Robert 7 months later at a community event, Henry felt like a beautiful dream. Robert was reliable, with a stable job at a factory. He promised me a home and a family, and when he proposed after 5 months of courtship, I said yes. I tucked Henry's business card into my wedding dress pocket, a secret I couldn't bring myself to let go of. Over the years, I'd heard through mutual friends that Henry had made good on his promises. He'd started a construction company that had grown into a large development firm, building shopping centers and office buildings across several states. He'd never married, much to people's surprise. They said he was too busy building his empire. Sitting in the Walmart parking lot, I wondered what this successful man would want with a 68-year-old widow sleeping in a borrowed car. But rational thinking was a luxury when I had nowhere to go. On the 4th morning, I couldn't take it anymore. My back ached from sleeping in the front seat, my clothes smelled like the car, and I'd spent my last bit of cash on a gas station sandwich that tasted like despair. I sat in the McDonald's parking lot, staring at the faded numbers on the business card. My hands shook as I dialed the number. Each digit felt like a step off a cliff. It rang once, twice. Henry Construction. "This is Henry." His voice came through the phone, deeper now, but unmistakably his. After 50 years, I would have recognized that voice anywhere. I almost hung up, but something in his tone, a warmth, made me speak. "Henry, this is Katherine." "Katherine Brown." "Well, it used to be Thompson," I said, my voice trembling. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Katherine," just my name, spoken like a prayer. "I'm sorry to call you like this. I know it's been a long time, but I don't know who else to turn to. My house was destroyed in the tornado last week, and my son doesn't want me to stay with him. I don't have anywhere to go." I rushed out, the words tumbling over each other. "Give me your location." "I'm coming to get you," he said, his voice all business. "You don't have to do that." I just needed to hear a friendly voice, I said. "Katherine, no argument. Tell me where you are." "I'm already walking to my car," he said. Through the phone, I could hear the sound of a door closing and an engine starting. I gave him the address, my voice barely above a whisper. "Henry, I'm not the girl you remember," I said. "Neither am I. But I've been waiting 50 years for this call," he replied. After we hung up, I sat in the parking lot for 2 hours, alternating between panic and disbelief. What was I doing? But as I watched the entrance to the parking lot, waiting for a car I wouldn't recognize, carrying a man who might not recognize me, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since the tornado. At 11:30 exactly, a black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. The windows were tinted, but I knew it was him. The car stopped 3 spaces away from mine, and the driver's door opened. Even after 50 years, with gray hair and lines around his eyes, I knew him immediately. Henry walked towards my car with the same confidence he'd had at 19, but now it was refined by success. He wore a tailored suit and a silk tie. But his eyes, those deep blue eyes that had haunted my dreams for decades, were exactly the same. I wanted to hide, to sink down in my seat and pretend this wasn't happening. I looked terrible. My hair was a mess, my clothes were wrinkled, and I smelled like disappointment. But he was already at my car door, tapping gently on the window with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. I rolled down the window, suddenly unable to breathe. "Hello, Katherine," he said softly. Up close, I could see the changes time had made. His dark hair was now silver, cut short and professional. Lines mapped the corners of his eyes and bracketed his mouth. He was broader through the shoulders, more solid, like success had given him physical weight. But when he smiled at me through the car window, I saw the boy who used to take me to the lake and tell me about his dreams. "Hi," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he said the three words that changed everything. "You look beautiful." I started crying. Right there in that McDonald's parking lot, I broke down completely. 50 years of held back tears, for days of struggling, a lifetime of feeling unworthy. It all came pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs. He didn't say anything else. He just opened my car door, helped me out, and wrapped his arms around me while I fell apart against his chest. He smelled like expensive cologne and fresh laundry, like success and stability, like everything I'd lost and everything I'd never had. When the tears finally stopped, I pulled back, embarrassed by the wet spot I'd left on his expensive suit. "I must look like a disaster," I said. He reached up and brushed a tear from my cheek. "You look like someone who's been through hell and survived it." "That's not a disaster, Katherine. That's strength," he said. I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. Strength? I'm 68 years old, sleeping in a borrowed car because my own son doesn't want me. That's not strength. That's pathetic, I said. His jaw tightened. "Your son is an idiot. I know you." And the Katherine Thompson I knew would never turn away someone in need, especially family, he said. He helped me gather my belongings from the car and loaded them into his Mercedes like they were precious cargo. "Where are we going?" I asked as he opened the passenger door for me. "Home," he said simply. The drive took about an hour, through increasingly affluent neighborhoods. We pulled into a long driveway marked by a small bronze plaque that read, Henry Estate. The house was a magnificent mansion, elegant and understated. It was built of stone and timber, with large windows that caught the afternoon light and a wide porch that invited you to sit and stay. Henry parked the car, but didn't get out right away. "It's too big. Always has been. I built it thinking I'd fill it someday," he said quietly. "You never married?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He turned to look at me. "Came close a few times, but there was always something missing," he said. The house was even more impressive inside. Hardwood floors gleamed, ceilings soared, and the furniture looked like it belonged in design magazines. But it didn't feel cold or like a museum. There were books everywhere, comfortable chairs by the windows, and family photos on the side tables. "Are you hungry?" "I was just about to make lunch when you called," he said, leading me into a kitchen that was bigger than my entire old house. I realized I was starving. I started to say I didn't want to be any trouble, but he cut me off. "Katherine, stop. You're not trouble. You're the answer to a question I've been asking for 50 years, he said. While he cooked, I studied the photographs around the room. Henry at groundbreaking ceremonies, shaking hands with important people, Henry with different women at charity events, but he never looked truly happy. Over lunch, I told him about my marriage to Robert, about Ethan, and about the tornado that had destroyed my life. He listened without interrupting, his blue eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry about Robert, about your house, about your son. But I'm not sorry you called me," he said. I asked him why. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Because I never stopped loving you. Every business deal I made, every success I achieved, it was all so I could be worthy of you when you came back to me," he said quietly. I stared at our joined hands. I'm not the girl you remember, I said. No, you're better. You're real. You've lived and loved and lost and survived. That 18-year-old girl was beautiful, but she was just potential. You're the woman that potential became, he said. Living with Henry was like rediscovering a part of myself I'd forgotten. The first week was awkward, but he was patient. He gave me the entire guest wing of his house, a bedroom larger than my old living room, with a private bathroom and a view of the gardens. We fell into a routine. Morning coffee on the porch, afternoon walks around the property, and evenings talking about our lives. 3 weeks into my stay, Ethan called. I was in the kitchen, making dinner and actually humming something I hadn't done in years. Hi, honey, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Mom, I've been trying to reach you. Your phone keeps going straight to voicemail. Where are you living? He asked. I told him I was staying with a friend. What friend? Mom, you don't have any friends with money, he said. I replied coolly, you'd be surprised. He then said that he and Lily had been discussing the situation and thought they might have been too hasty. Maybe I could stay in their guest room for a while. The offer that would have meant the world to me a month ago now felt hollow. I told him I was perfectly happy where I was. He then started to worry about my safety, saying I couldn't just move in with a stranger. I told him about Henry, how he'd never made me feel like a burden, how he valued my company and told me I was beautiful every day. Ethan then asked if it was some kind of relationship. I told him it was none of his business. He tried to convince me to bring Henry to dinner on Sunday so they could meet him, but I refused. You gave up the right to approve or disapprove of my choices when you kicked me out, I said firmly. Henry found me a few minutes later, standing at the kitchen window. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. My son called. He wants to meet you, I said. Good. I've been looking forward to meeting him, he replied, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. 6 months after that fateful phone call in the McDonald's parking lot, Henry and I got married. It was a simple ceremony in the garden, with only a few close friends and family as witnesses. Ethan came to the wedding. I debated whether to invite him, but Henry convinced me to give him one more chance. He showed up alone, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit. He shook hands with Henry politely and made small talk. But I could see the calculation in his eyes as he sized up Henry's house and car. After the ceremony, at the dinner table, Ethan started asking Henry about his business. Mom mentioned you're in development. That must be interesting work, he said. Henry smiled, but I could tell he saw through Ethan's motives. Over the following weeks, Ethan started calling regularly, something he hadn't done in years. But every conversation circled back to Henry's business. I could see that Ethan was trying to position himself for whatever might come next. 3 months later, Ethan called one evening while Henry was at a business dinner. Mom, have you and Henry discussed what happens to his assets in the future? He asked. I was shocked. Ethan, that's an incredibly inappropriate thing to ask, I said. He claimed he was worried about my protection, but I reminded him of how he'd turned me away when I needed him. I hung up on him, my hands shaking with anger. Henry found me crying in our bedroom when he got home. I told him everything, and he listened, his jaw tightening with each word. I'm sorry your son is too selfish to see what an incredible woman his mother is, he said. 2 weeks later, Henry invited Ethan and Lily to the house for dinner. He didn't ask me first, he just said there were things that needed to be said. When they arrived, I saw a side of Henry I'd never seen before. He was polite but firm. He talked to them about our relationship and their expectations. Katherine doesn't need your approval for our marriage or your protection. What she needs is for you to love her unconditionally, the way she's loved you your entire life, he said. Ethan's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. I do love my mother, he said. Henry looked at him. From where I sit, it looks like you love what you think she might inherit. You turned her away when she had nothing, and now you're courting her because she's with someone with money. That's not love, Ethan. That's opportunism, he said. The silence that followed was thick with tension. After they left, Henry asked me if he'd been too harsh. No, I said. You were honest. Maybe for the first time in his life, Someone told him the truth about his behavior. Now, 8 months later, Ethan calls occasionally. The conversations are different, more genuine. He asks about my garden and my well-being. He doesn't ask about Henry's business anymore. Lily has stopped sending gifts. I don't know if we'll ever have the close relationship I once dreamed of with my son, but we have something real now. And as I sit here with Henry, looking out at the gardens we tend together, I know that sometimes destruction is just another word for renovation. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, first love gets a second chance to become forever love.